I'll make a couple of opening comments. I was in the Army a long time ago, and the value of your troops, and you learn to respect your troops. So I have 3 troopers here with me that I'd like up here, but they don't have to come up. If I took Eric, Kelly, and Karen, you really have given my talk. You've really set the stage for my essentiality. And boy, I know how to have good soldiers, and you are it. I'm taking the position.
It's all yours.
Okay. I gave you very few slides. I think I don't even need a microphone normally. And I did something that I normally don't. I only have a few slides and my comments on paper. And maybe the intent was to have you pay attention to me and not the slides, although I have a few, as you can see. I think some of you think my idea is ridiculous. It's not, but it's sure a lot of fun to present it to you. And that's really what I hope to do. And let's see, slides are, I'm sorry, David, just
use the arrows.
okay, disclosures. Yes, I'm retired from academia, and I interact with company. You know what my greatest strength is? What I don't know. There's the title I put for my presentation, and it has all these keywords that I think are relevant. And maybe in the course of my few remarks, I'll touch on each of these words, but most importantly, the topic is an essential nutrient. If you write a good abstract, they always ask you for some keywords, right? Now, if I was to stop now and you go to sleep, if you copy this one sentence, this is the summation of my remarks. Adequate laxation represents and is the embodiment of dietary fiber essentiality. And that's what I'd like to present in the next few minutes. It's from your mouth to your anus. It's a full process of essential functions. Just a little bit of history. We're talking about added fibers today with the dietary, with the FDA and stuff. Some of you may or may not remember, this started the revolution. It was Fresh Horizons bread from Continental Baking, the makers of Wonder Bread and Twinkies. And I cut my teeth on this particular product. And the company sent me to Washington, D.C., and I got a call in my room, and from all people, I don't know if, Marion Barrows, does anyone recognize the name? She was the food writer for the New York Times. And she called me and she said, I hear you have some contact with Continental Baking. I said, yes, who are you? And she told me, I was a little bit in awe. And she said, I want you to do something for the New York Times. And what's that? We would like to have you get us into the bakery so we can put little logs in a pan, and as they go through the baking process, we can show Americans that they're eating wood pulp. But then there was another story that reminds me about fiber. Do you remember when they say eat the menu or eat the box rather to get all your fiber? So I went to this same hotel I was at earlier in my career, and I went, and it was quite nice, and they served me this appetizer. So I looked at it, and I start working at it with a knife and a fork. It wouldn't go. So I asked the waiter to come over. I said, I'm sorry, I can't eat this. He said, sir, that is your napkin to wipe your hands. Anyway, here's the challenge I have to try to present to you. Where's it going to go? Where's the fulcrum going to go? But before I say that, let me say a little bit about who knows why dietary fiber is a nutrient on the food label. It's on the food label because the government declared it a statutory nutrient. I've never been able to find where anyone has defined fiber as a nutrient. Yet I'm up here telling you it's an essential nutrient. So that is one challenge. A nutrient, a component to grow and survive. An essential nutrient, defined as not being synthesized, derived in the body, must be obtained in the diet, is obligatory for the proper physiological function of tissues and organs, and a requisite for cell processes. The combination of these factors leads to maintenance of metabolic good health. Fiber fits every one of those criteria. Every one. But it even has another essential factor. And again, it was Eric. It stimulates mucin production. Mucin production is the endogenous source of energy for the microbiota. I may be getting ahead of myself, but why? What are the essential functions of dietary fiber? Soluble or insoluble? When you eat it, you stimulate intestinal development, morphology, development, and function. And I'll expand on that in a minute. Then, as Dave indicated, and even Joanne, it is the primary energy source for the microbiota. You want more microbiota? You're going to give them more what? Fermentable dietary fiber. You want maybe more mucin? And I stand, please, I'm here to be corrected or challenged. You want more mucin? What are you going to give? More insoluble fiber. You're going to eat whatever it is, the peel, the bulking agents inside this, or whether it's cereal, nuts, berries, seeds, all that physical stimulant is essential, is the essential part of fiber. Let me ask you a question. How many of you are with food companies selling a product? How many use a fiber? Which one is the best? Which one is the best? That's another criteria I'll state. I'm standing here, although the comments were made before, dietary fiber may be plural, but it's a single entity on the food label, and it's a single entity entering your body when you eat it. Once it gets in your intestine, it explodes. Does it have physical particulate stimulating the intestine, or is it, the other important function is water holding. I have two experts here on viscosity, Dan and John, if you want to talk about that. But collectively, again, the soluble, insoluble, maybe viscous, soluble, hold water. But then what's the other criteria that's most important? The energy for the microbiota. And almost every source of insoluble fiber is fermented. Okay, particulate whole grain or something, the whole particle, wheat bran, only partially. But almost everything else is fermented. So what do I have here? Everybody talks about resistant starch, powder. There's all kind of supposedly prebiotics. Which is the best? They're all equal when it comes, well, I should be careful. They're all potentially equivalent to develop and have the microbiota grow. If I can look at my notes a minute. So I'm going to give you I've worked on, like a lot of people, on the definition of dietary fiber. But why is dietary fiber a nutrient? And I'd like to have you challenge me. What does it do? What does it do when you ingest it? It's a dietary particulates, bulk, roughage that stimulates the structure and function of the intestine. I'll repeat myself a few more times. Non-digestible carbohydrates that hold water is the primary energy source for the microbiota. What's the cascade for essentiality? Again, stimulates the intestinal development, primary source of energy. Why? What's more essential? The fiber, the microbiota that it allows to grow, or the short-chain fatty acids they produce? What's the most essential? Is it even necessary? The point I'm trying to make is dietary fiber, the microbiota, at least short-chain fatty acids are intrinsically linked. The fiber is essential to make your microbiota grow and to produce short-chain fatty acids, and I'll get that. All are dependent. Let me make back to history a little bit. The dietary fiber hypothesis says that if you eat a high-fiber diet, you're going to have less disease. How much did they eat? Somewhere in the area of 80 to 100 grams a day, mainly as resistant starch. And in that, what did they produce? Huge fecal mass. And what did Trowell, Burkett, and Painter show? And I have a paper here. That would increase fecal mass, transit times went down. And Joanne alluded to this earlier this morning, that I think that's a goal to reach for, that the value of fiber is to increase fecal mass. An important criteria. But I think I just had, let's see, I only have a few more slides. Again, the Institute of Medicine, and Joanne alluded to this, does not consider it essential. But if we think of fiber in the big picture, from mouth to anus, and what it does, I think it does have those properties. And I'll maybe go through it this way. When we're born, the intestine is almost, well, it's sterile, and it's really not functional. And I think Karen, it's pretty leaky, correct? But then I think it's the next slide. But as soon as you add fiber, you do what? The villi begin to expand. The crypts become development. Stem cells start going wild, producing all kind of things for tight junctions and things like that. So that the intestine has its normal integrity. Then what happens? Then you have fermentation. I'm repeating myself. The fermentation allows the microbiota. Now, we've heard a conference yesterday, and I can ask Eric and Kelly and others to expand. We don't know yet what's the best ratio of any of the phyla or any of the bacteria. Right, soldiers? Is that right? But let me ask this question. Is it beneficial to have more microbiota? Is that a prevailing thought? That if we have more microbiota reflected in more feces, brought about more about by both fermentable and non-fermentable fiber, is that advantageous? Would you want that as an individual? Forget marketing. Would you want that? And I feel that the answer is yes. And maybe one of the most important things about the essentiality of fiber, you've established the integrity. You've developed a microbiota. It produces metabolites, one being the short-chain fatty acids. But in the development of the intestine, where you see those little yellow appendages, the villi, what is also happening simultaneously is maintained with fiber. Both your innate and acquired immune system. They are developed. And if you maintain adequate fiber, that's what you're doing. I was interested in total parental nutrition. I don't know if how many are familiar with that. We're in various distressed states where they take people off all food and you either vein, nothing in the intestine. And in the human, reading initially, I thought it was total atrophy, that the cells would die. That's not true. It happens in animals. We can demonstrate that quite well. But only in the human, you only get about 10% atrophy. But the immune system is highly, highly compromised. And only when you go back to feeding some food into the intestine, now with fiber, you're going to get a restoration of that immune function. So, and again, I think it's like if you want a class, someone said to you, class for an hour, to talk about the cells that are part of the immune system that are developed in intestinal maintained on an adequate fiber diet. This is just a representation. You've seen slides similar, and Karen even gave you even a better illustration. That's what I want to say. We have question and answer. In regards, it's a nutrient. It's essential, but we take it for granted. And everyone should try, all of us, to increase our dietary fiber consumption. And I think that's it. Oh, and that's where I live. Because it's so isolated, so that I always come to try to get an audience so I can speak. So there. That's the end of my remarks. We'll have comments.